Hey everyone. So we often record well in advance of when we release episodes. This episode was recorded most recently and was scheduled to be released sometime in early January, but we've decided to release it early because the author we spoke to and the book he's written, we think would make an amazing Christmas gift for a lot of our listeners. So check out the episode and then check out the book. The book is available on Amazon. Daryl Utt is the author, Grit to Glory, A Green Beret's Journey from West Virginia to the Streets of Baghdad. And let me tell you, we can't wait to have him back because this was a fun episode to record. We like this man and we really enjoy what he has to say. Check out the book. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check the left phone for going to pull that direction out this side. They're pulling them out.
10-1-1. Advise ready for escape.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom. And apparently Chuck is experiencing a lag and a glitch.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's going to get nautical today.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I just transported in time. It was in the intro, and now it's
Do we need to postpone?
not.
Yeah, your connection's terrible. Do we need to postpone?
shit.
Or are you good? I mean, I can do it, and you can just chime in when your internet connection works. Oh, these
Stand
are
by.
the joys of. You good?
Yeah.
The joys of doing a virtual podcast.
Great.
Do you need to disconnect and reconnect?
Yep.
Okay. All right. We'll pause it. Are you working through your technical difficulties now?
Oh, man.
Okay.
I'm trying.
Well, I'm
man.
Tom. That's all right.
I'm trying.
And Chuck's
Just,
there with his technical difficulties, man. You ran
Say something,
solo
I
last
will.
week.
Sorry.
You ran solo last week and you did just fine, right? So this week I'm kind of solo because Chuck's having some technical problems. So he's going to be jumping in and out where he can. But our guest this week is Daryl, and is it Daryl Utt?
Utt, yep. Perfect.
Right, perfect. Easy. Good. And Daryl is a veteran and an author. And I guess the easiest way for us to kind of get into this is for us to talk about, like we always do, is kind of how you got into service in the first place. So why don't you kind of tell us about your background and how you ended up in the special forces?
I did run solo last week. Yeah.
Wow, that is a
Give
big
my
delay.
technical difficulties.
That is a huge delay.
Oh, this is...
So kind of how you ended up where you're at and how you and where you are now. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your journey to become a member of the special forces and that led to your combat deployments?
Sure. Appreciate it, Tom. Just wanted to say before I started that I have a lot of gratitude for you and Chuck and the service that you provide to your communities and to our great country. Just really thankful for what you guys do. I'm a huge supporter. So I just wanted to throw that out there first.
I appreciate that. It's one of those things where we all kind of do the same function. We just do it in different places, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's part of the brotherhood. Definitely part of the brotherhood. So I'm grateful and I'm very appreciative. I don't take that for granted at all. But yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be here. I'm a small town kid from Huntington, West Virginia, born and raised. And
how big is Huntington? Sorry, I have to ask these questions sometimes.
Yeah. I think Huntington's probably like 50 or 60,000. So
okay, all right.
I guess I'm not like up in the holler country boy. I think Huntington's probably maybe the second or third largest city in West Virginia, you know, with Charleston being the capital, being the first. But I was just back there, so it was a great privilege to be back there for the book launch, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, born and raised in Huntington, West Virginia, and I was very lucky. I had some great mentors in my life, mainly, you know, my father. And secondly was my football coach that I've spoken about a ton. And I just got a chance to see him after decades and decades of not seeing him. I didn't even really know that he was still alive, but I was Coach Carl Thornburg. He was a West Virginia National Guard Special Forces Sergeant Major.
Oh, wow.
And he was our head football coach. I'd been coaching at Vincent, you know, doing driver's ed and football for years. So I was very fortunate to have this man in my life. And I was very, you know, I was very honored to be able to put Coach Thornburg in the book and say, hey, if it wasn't for Coach Thornburg, there would never have been a Green Beret on my head. Just wouldn't have happened. So that's to kind of answer the first part of your question, you know, like what was that motivation? You know, I'd always kind of been intrigued by the military and wanted to serve. Being a kid, you know, from humble beginnings and didn't really have a lot of opportunities. The military made a lot of sense. And then with my dad kind of molding me for the military, and then my football coach kind of doing the same, it just naturally worked that way. So I graduated high school back in June of 1990. And then the next month, man, I was right off for basic training. I initially came in the Army as 11 Bravo infantry, did my basic training and advanced individual training down at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I was off to my first duty station in Fort Ord, California, which was a great experience for, you know.
You're probably the first person I've ever heard refer to their experience at Fort Ord as great.
Well, it really was because I didn't know, because I didn't have anything to really judge it off of.
Sure, I guess. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but when you're at the rifle range and you know, you got sand and the Pacific Ocean's in the background, like that's kind of cool, you know.
Yeah, you're just happy to be there, right?
Yeah. I didn't realize how kind of cool that was, but being in Monterey, California, obviously was really expensive for being such a young dude in the Army.
Well, then you'll kind of understand, because I was a cop in San Luis Obispo, California, and I did a lot of training. I did a lot of training at Camp San Luis Obispo, which, while it's, you know, California National Guard, it's still a beautiful garden spot to do some training. I'll tell you what.
Is that the same as Fort Hunter Liggett? What we called Fort Hunter Liggett, or something
Hunter
different?
Liggett was just north of us. Yeah.
Okay.
Liggett was just north of us, and then I believe you would call it Camp Bob.
Yes. Yeah.
Camp Roberts was a National Guard post, and in San Luis Obispo, California. So it's just south of Monterey. So yeah, it was basically you guys, then Hunter Liggett, and then Camp Roberts.
Yeah. Good times back then. We walked all over the page. We were light infantry, so we walked and walked and walked. It was crazy. But that was a good experience for me. That was a good foundation, good baseline. And then of course they deactivated Fort Ord, California. But before they did, the military had to do something super, super smart. They had to repave all the roads on Fort Ord before they shut it down, because that was just the way they did things back then, I guess. But they redid every single road, it seemed like. It was crazy. And then this is why we were packing up to move to Fort Lewis. But we went up to Fort Lewis, Washington. I spent a year up there. And then I went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, still infantry guy, but that's when kind of the bug hit. And I started thinking about it a lot more, like, hey, do I have what it takes, you know, to go out for Special Forces assessment and selection, and possibly, you know, go on to the Special Forces qualification course and earn my right to be part of, you know, a Special Forces team. That idea started kind of percolating in my brain. And I was right there at Fort Campbell with 5th Special Forces Group. So that was really my first exposure, you know, to actually seeing Special Forces guys out and about training.
Sure.
yes, I was around, like in Fort Lewis, Washington, there's First Special Forces Group, but I never saw those guys. I really didn't even know they existed because they were on a whole different part of the base. But at Fort Campbell, I could actually see them. So it really intrigued me. And they were doing a lot of cool stuff in my young, infantry mind, because they were out there. It looked like they were just training smarter, not harder. And we were going around with full battle rattle, helmets and body armor and all that stuff. And it just looked like they were doing things a little bit better, a little bit more efficient. And I kind of caught the bug. But I had that doubt in my mind, like, man, I don't know if I'm good enough to be part of those guys. So I kind of had to work through that mentally, and get myself ready.
Right.
So luckily I was able to do that.
Well, because isn't it, Campbell has a lot of like great, like historical, like 101st.
Yeah, I was part of the 101st
and 160th.
Yeah.
Special Ops Aviation, 5th Special. There's several well-known storied units out of Fort Campbell, right? So you're kind of right there in the middle of it.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I was part of the 3rd Battalion 187 Rakasans. The Rakasans definitely have a history and a legacy. And I remember, we got to meet some of the guys that were on Hamburger Hill that survived that. And
wow.
Man, it's just, it's like a super cool moment. And I wish that I would just realized it more as a young guy. Like,
don't we all?
You're kind of nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I found a picture the other day, and I'm in my uniform, and I'm standing beside one of the Rakasans from Hamburger Hill, and he's just, a little older guy at that time. And like, that meant so much to me as an older guy. But back then it was just like, I was too cool for school. And it kind of reminds me of a story. I have a buddy that entered the Army from Texas, and at his military entrance processing station, maybe the guy that swore him in was Master Sergeant retired Roy Benavidez, Medal of Honor recipients, Mac V. Sog, legend. But he was the same way, man. He was a young kid, and he sees this guy. He was a little bit of a bigger guy, back in the day, and he didn't really think much of it. And then years and years later, he's going through the 18 Delta medic course, and he starts learning about this guy named Roy Benavidez.
Yeah,
he's like, holy shit, that's the guy that like shook my hand or swore me into the Army. Like, holy shit, I didn't know.
Yeah, that's like saying that you got sharpshooter lessons from some guy named Carlos.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, oh yeah, it was Roy.
Yeah.
Which Roy?
Yeah.
Damn, that's so cool.
Yeah, but I ended up going
saying, right? Like, at some point you're going, the youth is wasted on the young. At some point, young you doesn't understand the enormity of the moment or the specialness of the moment, and old you looks back and wants to kick young you in the ass and say, dude, did you realize what was like? You wish you'd appreciated it more, or asked the question, or shook the hand and said the thing, and we just didn't know.
Yeah, it's the same way too. I spent 2.5 years as the chief of operations at the National Medal of Honor Museum, and I was fortunate enough to meet and to be around and to share a stage and do speaking engagements with a lot of Medal of Honor recipients. And I used to say to the staff, like, we're a little spoiled. Like, you guys really don't know how great of a privilege this really is, because I spent 26.5 years in the Army, and I only ever was around one Medal of Honor recipient. And that was another Mac V, SOG SF legend. It was Bob Howard. But I wish the young me would have, spent some time with Bob and took some pictures.
Right.
Because, he's passed now, but
yeah, it's Roy's passed, Bob's passed.
Yeah. He's, I mean, regarded as probably someone that could have easily been awarded 2 or 3 medals of honor, for the Vietnam War. He was just that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So
if only it had been a war people wanted to acknowledge, then he would have been more highly decorated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Guys like Hal Moore and all those guys, like these are heroes that I think if you served or you do the research, the history, we know right? The general public may not. They may know some of the, you know, the blood and guts Patton and, you know, the World War II guys that got the publicity. But I'll go on record that a lot of the Vietnam guys got the short end of the stick for the recognition they truly deserves, because whatever you felt or agree or disagree about the action and the combat and the conflict itself and the war itself, Hal Moore is a friggin' legend, and Bennett Roy is a legend, and Carlos
Yeah.
Hathcock. These men are legendary, and they did things that guys today can only scratch the surface of. You know, these
Yeah,
are the
and-
Chris Kyles of their day.
Yeah, and those guys had nothing to do, just like, you know, my generation with the global war on terror. You know, like we can all talk about it now because I'm an old retired guy, and you can ask me my thoughts about Iraq, and we can go down some of those rabbit holes, and I can give you my feelings now. But at the time, me and my generation that went to Afghanistan, went to Iraq, I just want to be very clear to the listeners that I only served in Iraq. I never served in Afghanistan. So I'm not trying to say that I served there.
Sure.
But my generation, we executed. You know, the commander in chief said, hey, Iraq, Afghanistan, execute. And that's what we do. We execute. Politics aside. Now I have an opinion, you know, happy to share it, but it's just like the Vietnam generation. You know, Bob Howard, Roy Benavidez, all those guys, Carlos Hathcock, they executed their country. A lot of them got drafted.
Right.
And they just executed, politics aside. Yeah.
I'm here to say, yeah. So you end up not sure that you're going to measure up to special forces, but you make the decision to go out for it. Was there a tipping point?
Yeah, there actually was. So in July of 1995, my unit from the 101st, we deployed to Sinai, Egypt for a peacekeeping mission. So, it wasn't like this big. I mean, it was exciting to us because we got to wear like this orangish kind of beret. So that was kind of neat, you know. And
you're like, I'm going overseas, Mom.
Yeah, we're going to Sinai for 6 months, and you know, it was something new and all that type of stuff. But kind of like the tipping point for me was there wasn't a whole lot of shit to do in Sinai, Egypt, you know.
Right.
So I got to train pretty hard, and you know, I'll say up front, you know, I was never the most physically fit, you know, stud guy. I had to work at every single thing, you know. If I was going to be able to climb a rope, I had to work at it. I had no natural. I wasn't one of those guys that could smoke like a pack of cigs and then go run, you know, 11:30, 12-minute 2 miles. Like that was never me. So I had to work on every single thing. But Sinai, Egypt really was the tipping point for me because I just got a chance to run and ruck and do push-ups and do setups and get really good at it. And that was the tipping point. That's the kind of like when my brain kind of clicked. It was like, hey,
I can do this.
I can do this. I can hang with these guys, or at least give it a shot.
Sure. So now you decide you're in Egypt and you decide to go special forces. How do you say, do you raise your hand? Do you wait till you go home? Do you take action immediately?
Yeah, well, I actually was going to go as soon as I came back because the rotation, the peacekeeping rotation was July to January. So I believe I had a class date for early, you know, we were going to come back in January of 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe I was probably going to go like February or March of 1996. But I ended up,
this is Clinton's military. You weren't going anywhere.
Yeah, right. But I broke my left fibula fast roping like in December.
Oh shit.
So that totally screwed up all of my plans.
Blow out,
and I kind of had to go to plan B.
Yeah. So you had to delay, but then you get through, right? And you what's that like? So you finally go, obviously you make it through, you become special forces. And what is that moment like to realize you like, okay, I came through some adversity. I broke my leg right before I got deferred, got rotated. I had to go to another class. Then you finally overcome all that adversity, you get your leg back, you get yourself back in shape because you lost time due to the injury and stuff like that. And like any athlete, right? You miss a season,
you're pissed, right? You want to win that championship that year. So now you have to wait till the next season. You get there, you finally graduate, and you're special forces. What's that like to realize, holy shit, I did it?
Yeah, it was a surreal feeling, because I ended up getting pushed from, that February, March selection class in 96. I got pushed to like September, October to go to Special Forces Assessment Selection. Was fortunate, did really well. And then, had to go to airborne school and then go through the Special Forces qualification course. So I ended up graduating in early 1998. But standing there, with my Green Beret on, I still had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Obviously I was happy with myself. I was very happy, but I was looking around at some guys that had unbelievable backgrounds, like their base in the military. I mean, just out of this world, some of the things that they had done. There were guys that had been in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, so had been to combat before. These are the people that I graduated with. So I was a little bit in awe of some of these guys. And
so it's kind of that, really, I may not be a hero, but I served in the company of heroes. Like,
right. Yeah. And it's really, it's definitely one of those moments where, you kind of have like a second of like, you want to celebrate just like for a little bit, like, oh man, I made it. I'm a Green Beret. And then you quickly realize, like, I think what I just went through was kind of the easy part. Now the hard part really begins every day to earn the right to wear this Green Beret and the privilege to serve with some of the best guys, in the military.
So now it's 1998.
Yeah.
And you are mid-20s, early 20s?
Yeah. So I'm about 24, 25.
And I am like, I've listened to this story. So we're close to the same age. I'm probably 3 or 4 years your junior.
Okay.
And I became a cop post 9/11.
Okay.
But as I think about, what you were going through, because I remember where I was at in my life in the late 90s. So now you are your early 20s, your special forces, you're in it's Clinton's military, right? And now you are quickly headed towards September of 2001, right? So we know about the USS Cole, right? We know some of these other events. I mean, Somalia had Black Hawk Down, your book right behind you. Like, these are events that are impressing upon your psyche as a young soldier, and you're still not going anywhere. And then we head inevitably towards September 11th, which changes everything, right? So did anything besides training and the normal things between 1998 and 2001? Where are you at, and what are you doing? Knowing what's going on in the world, but knowing that the U.S. government and the executive, commander in chief is loath to send his troops anywhere, even after ships get bombed by rowboats. Where are you at mentally and physically?
Yeah, for sure. Like the embassies had just been bombed as well. Like right when I was going over to Stuttgart, Germany. And not a lot of people remember this time period, Tom, because as soon as 9/11 hit, like, it was game on, and everything that the military had been doing up to 9/11 was so easily forgotten and kind of like kicked to the curb.
Right. You got the Balkans.
Yeah, the Balkans was huge, man. That was that was the playground for 10th Special Forces Group, which was my group. And I was forward deployed, and I was operating out of Stuttgart, Germany. So we were basically on a beeper, and we were always getting called out of Stuttgart to go down to San Vito, Italy, to pre-stage for something that was going to go on in Serbia. So just to give you like a really quick Reader's Digest version, I actually had a really great foundation, and I was able to do some really cool missions for the time period before 9/11. Like once 9/11 hit, then it was like, it was game on. Everybody was doing stuff. But, before 9/11, I got to do counter sniper security for President Clinton in Sarajevo on Sniper Alley. That was pretty cool. I got to do counter sniper security for President Bush 43 when he came to Camp Bondsteel, Kosovo in 2001, like right before 9/11. He actually had the whole damn crew. You know, he had Condoleezza Rice, Rumsfeld, the First Lady, probably some other people that I'm missing. But, you know, I got to do that. I got to do special reconnaissance in the mountains of Kosovo on the Macedonian border.
Yeah.
Got to do combat search and rescue when the air war was actually going on. So I got to do really, really good missions. And then I also got to professionalize myself a little bit more because not only was I a Green Beret, you know, went through the Special Forces course, I went through Ranger School. So I had my Ranger tab.
Right.
I went through sniper school. So I was a sniper. So those 4 years in 1st Battalion, like took me from, hey, you're a brand new dude.
It's kind of like
to
on the
like,
job training.
yeah, like you got some experience, you got a great foundation. So it really did a lot for me to kind of propel me forward and get me ready for what was to come, you know, which I didn't know at the time, but you know,
yeah, of course.
it was going to be Iraq for us, not Afghanistan. That's just the way the cards were dealt. So, and another thing that's really weird because we have the, we have the ability to kind of look and say, well, you know, you guys were really worried about missing out on the war, and the fucking war lasted 20 years, bro. But back then, we were judging it off Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Grenada, Panama,
it's like 2 weeks. We're in and out. We're good.
Yeah. So it was like, hey man, we're not part of the initial invasion. They're not gonna send us to Afghanistan. We're gonna miss that.
Right.
And then we thought we were gonna miss out Iraq.
Yeah. Well, so now, and I want to give a shout out to the guys that did serve in the Balkans and stuff, because you're right, it is a little bit of forgotten deployments. And I will say this: my wife's grandfather, he's a legit rocket scientist. He worked for some places that with the name skunk in their title. Okay. And I remember going to visit him after he retired. My wife and I had been married for a while, and I went to visit their home, and he had a plaque in his office, and I have a picture of the plaque, and it said, in recognition of, and it says his name, from the Central Intelligence Agency for your work in the Balkans. Right. And I, being me, I was a cop, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That to have a plaque from the Central Intelligence Agency to say thank you for something you did is cool. And I asked him, I said, so what was the plaque for? And he goes, can't tell you. And I said to his son, I said, all right, come on, what do you do? He says, I don't know. And I was like, wow. Really? And then his wife was standing there, and she's like, I have no idea. And it's one of those things where, to this day, I've known the man. I've been married to my wife over 20 years. I have no idea what the plaque is for. I have put some pieces together based on what I know his job was and what I know we were doing in the area. And I've narrowed it down to a category of things that it could be for, but I have no idea, and he will never tell me. And to know that there was that level of black ops and clandestine shit going on really, really informs me that we were putting our boys downrange, and they're not getting the recognition for it that they should. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely.
So
I just think the danger level and the risk, the risk level for Afghanistan and Iraq was so high. It really just kind of paled in comparison to Kosovo. But I will say this: there was at one point, because we did the initial invasion in Iraq in 2003. We were there for a few months. We were up north with the Kurdish Peshmerga. And then we came back from Iraq, and then we had to do a deployment in Kosovo. We still had that responsibility. We still had that obligation. But there was a time, it was early on in the war, but 10th Special Forces Group, which was my group, we actually had more KIA in Kosovo than we did in Iraq.
Wow.
Because that was like, because we had lost some guys from 10th Group. They had, they ran over a mine or, hit an IED or something like that. So I think we lost a few guys. So there for a little bit of time, maybe it wasn't 9 months, but to a year or whatever it was until we started losing people from 10th group in Iraq. But there was a little bit of a time because I remember our team sergeant trying to get us pumped up because we just went to Iraq, and it was like, hey, fellas, let's not get complacent with going to
Right.
Kosovo.
Kosovo's
We
not
have guys. Yeah, we've had guys that have been killed. Actually, more guys killed here than in Iraq. So,
Yeah.
So
now you guys, so let's fast forward. It's 9/11. The shit has hit the fan, or the excrement has hit the air conditioner, as my DI used to like to say.
Yeah.
And you go to Iraq, and now you've written about some of your experiences in your book, which we'll talk about, your book, Grit to Glory. And some of those, basically, correct me if I'm wrong, your book details a lot of those experiences of your time in Iraq during that initial, 2003 to 2008-ish, like, time frame. Is that right?
Yeah, it talks a little bit about my time, in 03, because I'm on a team in 03. I'm not leading a team.
Sure.
So I was on a special forces team in 03. I talk a little bit about the initial invasion and what we were doing in northern Iraq. And then my next rotation was in 04, 05. We were in the eastern part of Iraq on the Iranian border. Talk a little bit about that. But the book is primarily focused on a January to August 2006 rotation of Baghdad, and I'm leading a special forces team as the team sergeant. I'm a master sergeant E8. And
how's that
a lot of people could
doing
say
for you?
maybe, hey, so what's the so what? Like,
Yeah.
okay, you were leading a team in combat. You and everybody else did that. But really the significance of this rotation, this particular rotation, was we were there January to August 06 in Baghdad in a suburb, Adamiyah. But we were there in February of 22nd, 2006. Al-Qaeda militants bombed a Shia mosque in Samarra, and it ignited a no-shit civil war across the country. And Iraq was already a bad, violent place. But after February 22nd, it was game on, and everybody started killing everybody. So we just happened to be a special forces team at ground zero of this.
Welcome back, Chuck, by the way. Chuck's got some technical problems solved. So you're now leading this team. It's just chapters in your book. Go ahead, Chuck.
I was going to say, what did that look like being on the ground when all this shit starts to pop off and break loose? What does that look like for you guys? What is running through you guys' in your team's head at that point?
Yeah, because Chuck's just joining us. You missed a few minutes of missed a couple of minutes of the podcast where poor Daryl was talking about, making into special forces and having putting the green beret on and having some imposter syndrome because he's look to the left and look to the right. And if you see a hero what is it? 1 in 3 guys is an imposter, and you're looking to your left and your right, and neither one of them are imposters. And you're like, oh, shit. Right.
Yeah.
So now here you are. The significance of you being a master sergeant and leading a special forces team. This is the guy that, less than a decade earlier was graduating from special forces school feeling like a faker. And now you're leading a team. And how do you feel about like, how do you overcome that? How do you go? Because I'm kind of I've experienced that a little bit in my career, where you get to a point where people look at you as a subject matter expert and look at you to lead, and you're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Well, actually, in 2000, so I got the team in 2005, the fall of 2005. So, I'd been in the military 14 or 15 years. Been in special forces 6, 7, 8 years. Had all of that experience from the Balkans.
Sure.
Had experienced adversity. Had experienced failure. Had 2 previous combat, deployments to Iraq in 03 and then 04, 05. So in 06, man, well, when I got the team in 05 and then the rotation was in 06, I was ready. I didn't have the imposter syndrome anymore. I had the confidence. I had the experience. I had the knowledge. And I found myself as basically being the most, and team sergeants typically are the most experienced dudes on the entire team.
Sure.
But normally there are like another 1 or 2 dudes. But I had a very, very young team, So I was ready for this rotation. I was ready for Baghdad, and I had a vision like how I wanted to do it. I didn't want to be on the defense. I wanted to be on offense. I didn't want to be reactive. I wanted to be proactive. I actually wanted to go over there and fucking burn it down. That's what I wanted to do. Now, the start of the rotation didn't go so great for us, and it's highlighted in the book.
Yes,
You know, I got punched in the face, man. I got punched in the face from the beginning.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So you know, like I said, man, I'm ready. I'm ready to burn some shit down. And the first thing that I dealt with was some like, you know, Mean Girls gossip shit. When I got to Iraq, I mean,
like from within your unit or from within the team?
It was from within, because you know I was part of 10th Special Forces Group,
right?
And we were replacing teams from 5th Special Forces Group.
Okay,
so it was Mean Girl gossip between 5th and 10th Group. So one of the guys that I'd sent over to kind of check things out, and come back and report to the team like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what they're doing. This is the people they're meeting with. This is the environment, you know, to get kind of like that no shit intel.
Yeah.
Well, the guy that I sent over, you know, didn't do a great job. And he was perceived by the 5th Special Forces Group team as like a party guy. You know, it's like, man, this guy didn't really care about the mission or what was going on in Iraq. He was wanting to know, how do you guys get booze? And are there chicks over here? You know, all kinds of dumb shit.
Right.
All bullshit.
Yeah. So when I showed up and I'm there with a couple other dudes and we're ready to rock and roll, and I'm hearing all the Mean Girls, you know, whispering and gossip. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on, guys? Like, and then I start piecing it together, what's going on. It's like, oh, we're viewed as the party team, you know, we're the party guys. And 5th Group, in their defense, like they were worried because they had just blood, sweat, and tears into the place that they were at. And then we were going to come and relieve them. And then the same exact team was going to come back and relieve us. So in their mind, like, hey, these dudes are going to sit over here and bullshit for 8 months and party and not do shit. And then we're going to come back and we're going to have to eat it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what they were worried
come
about.
back and fix it all.
But that's a legitimate gripe, right? Like
it really is.
Like,
it really is.
Okay, and I'll compare it to
sure.
like the police officers, you know, and I wasn't the first one. Somebody, you know, it was a member of the Easy Company that I met that told me this, and he said, you guys go out on a deployment every time you go to work, and then you go home at the end of your deployment, and then you go back out on another deployment the next time you go on shift. And so it really kind of reframed the idea, but it's the same concept, because I'd go work a 12-hour graveyard shift, and then I'd see the day guys coming on. I'm like, oh God. And I'm looking at who's on days, and I'm going, it's going to be a fucking shit show when I come into work tonight.
Yeah.
And it was only 12 hours. How much can they fuck up at 12 hours? Turns out a lot. Right now you're talking about 8 months. So 5th Group is looking at you guys going, fuck, the frat guys are here.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, it was legit, man. It was legit. And I had to do a lot of damage control.
I bet.
You know, not only with the 5th Group team to make them comfortable with who we are and what we stand for and what we were going to do, but you know, I had to make my own chain of command comfortable. So, you know, I had to make some phone calls, and basically between me and my captain, who's, you know, the team leader, overall responsible for everything good and bad that happens on the team. You know, my captain wasn't even there yet. So I think they were in fucking Spain or something. So I'm trying to make these decisions like
he's getting tapas in Barcelona.
Yeah.
Of course they're in Spain.
Yeah. But I basically made the decision. It's like, hey, as soon as this dude shows up to Iraq, I'm going to have to let him go. I wouldn't say fire, because that's a little, you know, it's a different term in the military, like firing someone versus kind of moving someone.
Because they're still in the military. You can't move them, right?
You're about to get reassigned to a very good position.
Yeah, it's still a kick in the fucking balls, man, to say, hey, you're not on the Special Forces team. You thought you were going to come over here and get your gun on and get your combat on. Well, now you're going to get your paperwork on, because you're going to go up to staff and fucking do paperwork shit. Like, that's a kick in the balls.
I think of Band of Brothers in the scene where the Colonel Sink tells Sobel, hey, you've done such a good job training these men. I'm not I'm not letting you lead them into combat.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a kick in the balls.
Yeah.
That's
So now
very
you-
similar.
So now you wrote a couple of chapters in your book, and the book again is called Grit to Glory. We'll talk about that, but you cover this time period, and it's a very short window from what it sounds like, right? And it specifically deals with you leading the team, and you got into some shit that some of these incidents are just chapters in your book. Is that about right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to set up the beginning because typically when you read a book, and my co-author, Lauren Gowdy, who did an amazing job, you know, when we were talking through the book and the flow of the book, you know, she was very adamant, like, hey, Daryl, we can't just do all the highlights, man. Like, we got to be genuine. We got to be authentic.
Yeah.
We got to talk about those times where you got punched in the fucking face.
Right.
And that's what I was just talking about. So I just wanted to share, you know, I won't go into more of what happened there, but there, it's not all the highlights, man. It's
read the book.
yeah, read the book. But
For sure.
there was definitely some adversity. And then we kind of started rolling and picking up steam a little bit, and we got some wins. We were able to capture a guy that the previous teams hadn't been able to capture, and we used some very unique methods to do it. We also got in some really nice firefights because Adamiyah, which, you know, was a suburb of Baghdad, was the last Sunni stronghold in Baghdad. The Shias had come in and kicked everyone else out, but they weren't going to be able to do that in Adamiyah, which is where we were, because they had a very large Sunni mosque, Abu Hanifa Mosque. And they were going to fight to the last man to keep Adamiyah Sunni. So, and they did. They're still there.
Right.
But for us, it was like we had a front row seat to all the Civil War, you know, back and forth. And we had an infantry unit or an army unit, from the 101st. So my heart went out to those guys because I was a former member of the 101st. But they had to work inside Adamiyah with the Iraqi army, and that was tough for them. You know, they got into a lot of firefights and stuff like that. But we had an agreement with those guys, and it's probably very similar to what you guys have with law enforcement. You know, for us, it was like, hey, if you guys are in trouble and you call us on the radio, we'll come and help you.
Right.
If we're in trouble, because we always traveled in a very small package. So it's like, hey, if we're in trouble, we call you guys, you're going to come get us, right? Or come help us. And it's like, hell yeah. So it's kind of like, hey, shots fired, you know, for like a cop or something.
Yeah.
It was like game on, man. Our brothers, we don't care what's going on. Our brothers say they need us. We're going to fucking be there. And that was April 17th, which is one of the chapters in the book. April 17th, 2006. Our brothers from the 101st, when we woke up in the morning, they were already engaged. They were in a firefight. So we heard it, and it sounded interesting. And it was almost at this point. Check this out, man. Check this out. At this point of the rotation, it's April 17th. So we've been there, you know, February, March. You know, we're 3 months in. It's almost at the point like we feel a little slighted because it's like, hey, it sounds like you guys are in a pretty good firefight, and you didn't call us. Like, you don't need us. Like, we feel left out. Like,
you didn't invite us to the party.
Yeah. It's like you guys are a fucking party or something. And
are we not friends anymore? What happened?
Are you mad at me? Did I do something to piss you off?
Are we not friends no more?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we called them and said, hey man, you guys need anything? And they said, no, I think we're good. It's like, fuck it. Okay. So that day, I always like to be part of any convoy that was leaving the base. That, like, as a leader, I felt obligated to do that because if shit was going to go down, it was probably going to go down outside the wire, you know, outside our compound, even though we got rocketed and mortared fucking all the time.
Right. You want to be
I just felt like I wanted to be with my boys, man. I wanted to be with my boys. So
hey, let's be honest. You didn't want to miss it.
I didn't want to miss shit, man.
Okay, because that's the thing. I'm gonna tell you right now. I've talked to a lot of team leaders, and any team leader worth their shit who's done the job and been there and done that, when their boys go, they get FOMO, right? You have fear of missing out, and you were like, "I'm going," and it is only the boss telling you, "I'm sorry, that's not your job anymore. You need to stay behind," and it is upsetting when you are told you cannot go.
It's like cops when they get told, hey, You were the first person here, first person to contact. You have all the information. You're going to sit at the CP and you're going to give us all the information while all of your boys get to go and do everything else because you get to control it.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
And you're like, God, because you have the tactical oversight and you have everything, and you get stuck in the rear.
So I get sidelined for being
delegating.
here first. Fuck you guys.
and
Yeah.
having all the info. You're like, cool, this is great.
So you're like, no, sir.
Yeah.
I would not send my troops to do anything I wouldn't do myself. Let's go.
Yeah, but check this out though. It was basically like an administrative convoy, which sounds kind of crazy, to like, oh, it's an administrative convoy in a combat zone in Baghdad. But since they didn't need us, we still had things to do because we had a meeting going on in the green zone. So we were dropping a guy off for that. Our interpreter was getting ready to go home to see his family, and we were picking up some supplies. It was just kind of like some bullshit that we had to do, but still serious because we're outside the wire, and every time you're outside the wire, you risk getting fucking blown up or shot up.
Same thing with us. Every car you stop could kill you.
That's right. That's right. So we had just dropped off one of our guys at the green zone, and we were getting ready to depart the green zone on route Irish to go to the Baghdad International Airport. And we had these little embassy issued cell phones in our pocket sleeves. And my cell phone's gone off. So I tell the driver to pull off, and it's Chris, my team leader. And he said, hey man, the 101st just called. They need help now. Like the situation has changed. They need you guys. Are you able to support? And I knew the answer, man. I knew the answer. But I was like, hey, give me a couple minutes. I'm going to gather up the dudes. And we talked about it really quick. And it's like, hey man, they need some help. Are you guys down? I wanted to get some buy-in. I thought it was important. I knew the fucking answer, but I still wanted to get some buy-in.
Yeah, that's a good leader.
I said, hey, are you guys down? Because you know what we're getting ready to get into, man. Because it's bad weather. When we left, it was bad weather, so that meant no air support. I'm sure the enemy knew that. We knew that. And it sounded like, that morning, it sounded like a really good firefight. So we're going into a dangerous situation. It's daylight. We're in an urban environment, which is, as you guys know, being law enforcement, you're in a 360-degree environment. People can fire from rooftops, windows, streets, alleys, cars.
Yeah. There's no point that way.
Yeah. It's fucking everywhere. So
your vigilance has to be on point.
Exactly, brother. Exactly. So
head on a swivel.
Head on a swivel. I knew what we were getting into. Everybody on the team knew what we were getting into. And every person to a man, even our fucking interpreter, was like, yeah, let's do it, man. We're down.
I love that,
dude.
Yeah, so we called back and said, hey, we're fucking down. We're headed that way. Give us a link up spot and we'll make it happen. And that's what we did.
You know what I love about that? Sorry, I just, one of the ways that I was asked, how do you measure your success as a cop? And an older, saltier, badass Army vet cop told me, he goes, when you come up on the radio and you say your call sign, and the words come out of your mouth, I'm en route to provide backup. If the guy who's asking for backup, if his shoulders relax a little bit, you're a good cop.
Right.
That's badass.
And so I think of you, and I think of the 101st, and the 101st place is a call, and they get you on the prick, or no, they get you on the embassy cell phone, right?
Yeah.
And they say, hey, we need you. And you go, hold on, let me call you right back. You talk to your boys. You knew the answer, right? Like you said, because you knew your boys. And your boys wanted to be the tip of the spear, just like we all do.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah. And you call them back and you say, hey, we're en route. I imagine when he hangs up and he looks at the 101st and he goes, 10 spec forces is en route. And all their shoulders relax a little bit. That's what that's where you're at. And that's a great place to be.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, for sure. So we pull up on the scene, man, and I talk about this in the book, and I like to think that this book is not just like a military, like, I think it transcends, I think law enforcement would love this book. I think people that work for the federal government, business, entrepreneurs, But I wanted to kind of like point to one specific lesson that I think is very valuable to the first responders and my law enforcement brothers and sisters. We're hauling ass to get there because we know our brothers need us.
Yeah.
And my fucking driver almost flips the gun truck because I'm trying to get him to go up an exit ramp.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him to go up this,
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, we're going to
Go the
own
wrong
this
way, bitch.
road and we're going to save some time.
Yeah.
But in his mind, when I'm saying, hey, fucking take a right, he's thinking like, this is the fucking exit ramp. Like, what the fuck? And I was like, God damn it, take this right. And he fucking, grabs the wheel and kind of manhandles it, puts us up on two wheels.
Yeah.
And thank God it was only quick, but thank God we came back. But if we would have flipped, it would have definitely killed the fucking gunner because his body's halfway out the vehicle.
Right.
Sure.
And it probably would have killed all of us. And one of the big learning points from that very incident is like, hey, you're fucking useless to everybody that you're trying to help if you don't arrive alive.
Yeah.
Like, you got to fucking get there alive, dude.
Oh my God. You just repeated a mantra that our emergency vehicle operations instructor would say, which is the first rule of backing up your partner is you got to make it there.
Yeah.
You do no one else you do everybody else a disservice if you cause another accident and now you have people to come to respond to you, to extricate you, or to come and back you because you just got involved in some shit. So I totally get where you're coming from because we get that shit preached on us all the time.
Rule number one is you got to arrive alive.
Yeah. And I think that's such a valuable lesson. And when I was fucking writing this with Lauren, I was like, man, the first time a cop reads this book and he's like, dude, that's a badass lesson. Like, we know this 100%. One. Like, I'm going to make my fucking brand new rookie dude read this part. Like, that'll make my heart really feel good. But we got that all figured out. We ended up arriving there and we linked up with the Iraqi army. I'll give the Reader's Digest version, but we linked up with the Iraqi army. We linked up with the 101st. I wanted to make sure I knew where every friendly element was. And because it was very important to me, like, I don't have a blue on blue, like, hey, we just shot a fucking Iraqi policeman, or we just shot a kid from the 101st that's 19 years old that's fucking running around crazy scared. So as soon as I figured out where everybody was, and I remember specifically doing this, I'll try to do it for the reader or the listeners, but I was basically able to hold my left hand out. It's like, okay, so from my left all the way over here to my right, you're saying there's no friendlies. These are all bad guys. If anybody has a weapon, they're a bad guy. We can kill them. And they were like, yep, they're all bad guys. Everybody out on the street. We've been engaged for the past 5 fucking hours. People are maneuvering on us. Yeah. It been
and they just called you at the very end.
No, so let me ask, when did they call and how long did it take you to get there? Because first of all, crazy. But second of all, that speaks to the hard fucking huge nuts of the 101st. Who was the same unit that said they didn't need to be rescued by Patton's Third Army when they were surrounded by the fucking Germans. The 101st won't call for help unless they really fucking need it.
That's right, man. They thought they had it. They had, the Iraqi army guys out there. They had the 101st guys there, and they were doing their engagement back and forth. Now, the 101st was smart because they'd been operating in this area. So we were used, just to give some context and to kind of back up the 101st and why they were doing what they were doing, or why they did what they did. We were used to a lot of harassment fire up to this point.
Sure.
From January to April. It was like some dudes would fire, then they'd fucking run away.
Yeah, crack.
It was kind of anticlimactic. So, but this was the first time that actually they were fighting kind of toe to toe, and the 101st knew something was going on almost instantly, and they were trying to kind of work their way through that. And then they were also worried, like, hey, we don't want to get sucked into something. Are they trying to draw us in? Like, what's going on here? Right. So I think they were trying to work through everything. And I think they probably, it's like, hey, we don't want to bother the special forces guys. They're doing their little thing. Because we did have an agreement. It was like, hey,
we don't need those fuckers.
If you do call us, we're going to burn shit down. Like, don't call us if you want us to do, like, oh, it's one dude. Up
I'm not your girlfriend. You don't call me to complain. You call me when you fucking want answers.
Like,
we're coming to party.
Yeah, we're going to burn shit down. And if you see any pictures from that time period, there's usually smoke or fire in the background because we're burning shit down.
Yeah.
So they probably had
Absolutely.
that in the back of their mind. But
You didn't call us to redecorate.
yeah. And I think too, they had actually tried to call some other units. And once they started getting to that point, it's like, okay, we've been slugging it out for 4 or 5 hours. We got to be careful on our ammo. And hey, if they know that we're kind of in a weakened state, they might continue moving our way. So they kind of used us as a Hail Mary, kind of getting back to what you were saying, Tom, with, hey, I think we can break glass on these guys and they'll fucking come and help us. And that's what they did, man. They broke glass.
Right.
They called us. We got there probably 10 or 15 minutes. So we got there right at the 5-hour mark. They probably called us
Fast.
4:30, 4:45 into
So
the
I have a
firefight.
question. Then.
Yeah.
Chuck was having some technical difficulties when we covered this part. How does it feel for you when the 101st, who you have previously been a part of, calls?
Man, I mean, I was part of that unit. So,
Right.
you know, a lot of
Is it
people
different?
talk about the rivalry and, you know, oh, we're special forces.
Right.
We're like, no, man, there's fucking none of that shit in combat. There's
These are
none
my
of it.
boys, right? Like,
Yeah. They're fucking Americans, man. It's not like, well, hey, who are you guys? And, you know, there's no fucking race shit. I mean, there's
Right.
none of
No.
that. It's a fucking American, man. It's probably exactly like it is law enforcement.
you were
know,
blue.
Yeah, it's probably the same way, man. It's like, hey, these are
That must
Americans.
have been. I was gonna say that must have been like a crazy full circle moment.
Yeah, it really was. And you know, I still had the 101st in my heart. I'd
That's
spent
what I
time
mean.
there.
Like you had the Screaming Eagle on your sleeve, and now some Screaming Eagles who you know from history and from personal experience don't call for fucking backup unless they need fucking backup. And not only are they calling for backup, but they're calling the in case of emergency break glass fucking unit.
Yeah.
And you're the one that gets the call, right? Like I can't imagine the level of like, fuck yeah, boys, we're fucking doing this.
And check out the package that we actually had. You know,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like we're a fucking huge, you know, like, hey, we got
Yeah.
6 vehicles, fucking 27 pipe hitters. You know what we had that day? We had 2 fucking gun trucks, 2 armored gun trucks. We had 6
Wow.
Green Berets. And we had a fucking interpreter, and we had, you know, a 240 machine gun and a 50 cal.
I don't
We're
know, man.
light.
rolling light.
Put your 2 gun trucks and 6 fucking Green Berets. Oh, like I'll take the Pepsi challenge over a lot of other units any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
We
But
are light.
Your point is you guys travel light, and because you're what did you say? You're an administrative convoy, right? You're basically your chauffeurs.
Yeah, I mean, we're
that day.
fighters too. Like we always.
No. I mean
were-
the assignment, not you guys, but the assignment was not. You were not ready to go get involved in a firefight like this. You were ready to play security detail to a guy that needed a front and back driver, and now
Right.
you're being retasked and saying, hey, you know, it's kind of for law enforcement. It's like, hey, all I got is 2 mags and a handgun, but I'll come.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were probably a little bit surprised when they saw us, you know, because I mean, people would look at us like, you guys are fucking crazy to be driving around
Yeah.
Baghdad with 2 gun trucks. And not only that, because
Yes, we
2
are.
gun trucks holds, you know, 5 people per vehicle.
Right,
So
right.
not only are we light with our 2 vehicles, which is basically unheard of. I think the regular Army, their standard operating procedure was you don't leave the wire unless you're in a convoy of like 4 or 5 vehicles. Some
Right,
shit,
right.
some crazy shit like that. So our things, you know, our standards were different. We could leave in 2.
You guys,
And then
go,
not only were we in 2, but we had 3 dudes.
Yeah.
You know, 3 dudes in each plus an interpreter. But here's the thing,
Yeah,
man. When we got there and we found out where all the bad guys were, we weren't scared of getting sucked into shit. Like we were able to
Right.
maneuver. I didn't have to worry, you know, I didn't have to worry about the Iraqi army, you know, like, hey guys, follow me. Like I didn't have to worry about shit. I just had to worry about my guys.
Is that because you kind of came in, you kind of had that 10,000 foot view because you're not actively engaged? You can kind of come in and kind of sit back for a second and kind of gauge the horizon and be like, okay, this is what I set up my left and my right lateral limits. Everyone else can die inside of here. And
Well, yeah, you're
all
coming
right,
to a
cool. We're
fresh
good to
hut.
go.
Yeah.
And then now you're not as actively engaged. Your emotions aren't, so you can think a lot clearer. I mean, yeah, your emotions are high because these are your boys, this is a full circle moment for you. But is it because you have that kind of that third party atmosphere where you can kind of sit back and kind of look at everything?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I was going for when I got there, when I talked to the Iraqi commander and got, his views on what was going on. And then I got to talk to the 101st commander, get his views on what was going on. And you're exactly right. I was able to piece those pictures together. And then as soon as he told me, like, everything to my left and right is fucking kill it.
Right.
And I was able to relay that to the gunners. They were still trying to unfuck themselves, and I'm not saying that disrespectfully.
No, I get what you mean.
Right.
They were just trying to
They're
get organized because they had to fucking
Yeah.
link up with the Iraqis and pointy talkie and all that shit.
Yeah.
Plus, they had some other elements that had finally were freed up, and they were getting ready to link up with them. So in my mind, I knew what I wanted to do, what our tactics, what we always like to do: surprise, speed, violence of action, and overwhelming firepower.
Fuck yeah.
That was like that was it. Surprise, speed, violence of action,
Tattoo that
overwhelming
on me,
firepower.
put it on my headstone.
Yeah. So I knew, like, hey, this is where the bad guys are. They're all in this area. I know that they're firing. And actually, Dylan's got one of the images. I don't know if he'll be able to use it now, but it's in the book and you can see it. But we were basically able to drive up this north-south road, and all of the side streets off that road was where all the bad guys were. So we would just kind of play leapfrog with the vehicles, or sometimes both of our vehicles would stop and we would engage and we would eliminate threats. And it was simple. That's what, it was. We had two vehicles. We would shoot, we would eliminate threats, and we would keep moving. And then we would, we came back. And then that really, in my humble opinion, that changed the whole tide of that battle, because now we had the momentum, we had the advantage. And then when we came back after eliminating a lot of those threats, we basically got online and we started working through Adamia, and we just continued eliminating threats. So
I mean,
it was a 2-hour firefight.
Right. You're like, okay, so this worked and we're going to keep doing it. Right?
Exactly.
It's Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. It worked for Grandpa. It worked for Dad. It's going to work again today. Right. Like, you guys are, I love the simplicity of that mission, which is okay.
Yeah.
We have from this point on the left to this point on the right, and we have to make it this far in. And if you're in that zone and you need killing, we're going to kill you. And it's that simple. Don't fuck around or you will find out.
Fuck around, find out.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is that I talked to another really big time like high up there leader in special forces, and he breaks things down. He was talking about how he broke his stuff down to like the simplest form of comprehension. Hey, this is what we're going to do. This is real simple. Yeah, everyone's pinned down, but we're just going to go over here and we're going to work this street. We're going to kill everyone there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next street and we're going to kill everybody there. It's a very simple instruction. It's a very simple task, right? At hand. Hey, we're going to go do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to complete it. And then we're just going to move on. We're going to do the same thing. And then we're going to get everybody else together and then push all online in a big skirmish. And we're just going to clear the fucking town. And it's super simple, right? At the base roots. But when you look at it at one big, you look at it from like everything all at once, it's hectic, it's crazy, it's gnarly. But he's able to break it down, and it seems like a lot of you top tier leaders and tier one dudes, you're able to break it down to the most simplest form, and it gets people to get out of their shell, calm down, relax. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Whereas before, they were all bogged down, they couldn't think straight. But you come in and you're able to give a simple instruction. Hey, this is what we're gonna do. It's simple.
I think, and I know it's a movie, but I think of the simple instructions of Dutch in Predator when he says, if it bleeds, we can kill it. Right. Like, there's a point at which I tell people all the time, and law enforcement, we just kind of had this. I was on the Police One podcast. I was invited to do a year-end in review, and I'm not sure when this podcast airs, but it may or may not be out already. So if it's out, cool. I'm glad you listened to it. If it's not out, I'm promoting it ahead of time. But we talked about one of the things they wanted to review what patrol cops asked for. What they most commonly experience in 2024 and what they're asking for in 2025. And one of the things we talked about is there needs to be a return to that simple ethos that you're talking about, Master Sergeant, which is if we need to show up and deal with you, we are bringing an ass whooping with us, and it's your fault, right? It is not on us. We don't show up unless you have fucked around, right? And when we show up, we make sure you find out, right? Like the FAFO that we love to talk about on the show, and that simplicity of your mission and your goals and your mindset and the clarity of everything you guys are tasked to do, which is we are not here to make friends. We are here because you guys gave the 101st a hard time, and you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, to jump forward a little bit into this 2-hour engagement, because we were fighting through the streets, the back alleys, for 2 hours in this urban environment. Well, the enemy did throw us a curveball, about 1:30 into it. And we got to a certain point, and our engine block, it was the lead gun truck. The fucking engine block got shot out. And, the trail vehicle's calling me. It's like, hey, Rowdy 7, which was my call sign in 2006.
I love that call sign.
Rowdy 7. You guys are leaking fluids everywhere. Leaking fluids from the engine everywhere. And I lean over to tell my driver, I'm getting ready to say, hey, we're fucking leaking fluids. And he tells me, I got no fucking power over here. I was like, holy shit. Like, we're in the middle of the biggest firefight of our life here, 2 hours. And our engine block got shot the fuck out, and we lost everything. So luckily, we were prepared for that. We were trained for that. We had planned for that. And one of the things I like to say, you don't fucking rise to the occasion. You rise to your level of training.
Yes.
You don't,
absolutely.
You just don't think that you're going to be a fucking superstar one day and say, hey, I'm going to go out there by myself and kill 20 dudes. Like, you're probably going to get smoked.
Yeah, I'm going to train like an asshole and fight like a champion is never going to happen.
You're right, bro. You're right. Exactly, man. You guys see the same thing, but you don't rise to the occasion. You rise to your level of training. And we had these big ass toe straps.
Your lowest level.
Yeah. We had these big toe straps on our vehicles, and our trail vehicle hooked up the toe straps to our vehicle, and they fucking towed us out of there. We went back to base. And we swapped out our vehicle. We got a fresh gun truck. We got a double load of fucking ammunition. And we told our brothers that we were coming right back. And we fucking did.
Yeah.
We came right back and we finished the fight. So,
wow.
Yeah, man, it was a great day. We accomplished everything that we wanted to accomplish. Talk about it in detail in the book. It's not like high level shit. It's like, I was shooting this dude from the rooftop. He was shooting, like, it's very detailed. I think people are going to love this chapter. There's a lot of great lessons learned in this chapter of the book.
Well, so that's a good place, because we are over time, but that's a good place to, I think. And I hate to do this because I want to hear more. I could sit here.
I want to keep going.
I'll give you as much, but our shows are only an hour and we're already over that. So the book is From Grit or Grit to Glory. Right. And in it, this is one of the chapters, and you specifically detail the stuff you're talking about, the nitty gritty down in, like, you want to get down in the weeds. You want to hear the perspective of somebody who's like there doing it. This is the book, right? It's Daryl Utt, Grit to Glory, a Green Berets journey from West Virginia to the streets of Baghdad. And if I say, it says elite success is not reserved for a select few. It's open to anyone willing to put in the work and strive for greatness. I love that opening on your overview because it's true.
That's badass.
Put in the work. And I am hoping that we can get a copy of the book so I can read it, because I'm genuinely as excited to read this as I am excited to read, or I was excited to read Lone Survivor, and I was excited to read Black Hawk Down.
100%.
So let's talk about who you are and where they can get. So where can people find you, and where can people get the book?
Yeah, so people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. It's
Okay.
going to be Daryl Utt. Probably most active just because that's what I know, man. I know I'm probably a dinosaur. But I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram at Daryl.Utt. Not a hard guy to find. I'm trying to learn how to post and how to do followers and all that shit on Instagram. I'm learning.
Well, we
But
may have somebody that can help
Right
you
on.
with that. pretty
Okay,
soon.
okay. So I'm trying to do that. But the book was just released, man, December 3rd. And I humbly say this. It was an Amazon #1 new release the day it fucking came out.
Oh,
And that
Wow.
really blew me away. Very, very thankful for that.
That's
It's
amazing.
been selling really well. It's hard to find the hardcovers now, but you can get the book at Amazon. It just came out on December 3rd. We got the Kindle version on
Amazing.
Amazon. We got the hardcover on Amazon, and we got the paperback that's available on Amazon. And the reason we did the paperback is because all the hardcovers were selling out, and it was hard for us to keep them in stock. So this week, I'm going to start working on the Audible. So I'm really fired up about that.
Are you reading it?
Yes, I am reading
Yes.
it.
That's
I
So
love
that's a
amazing.
great question because,
Hell
and
yeah.
I'm not an Audible like
It doesn't matter. I love
professional.
that you're reading it.
And
It's
that's
your
dude,
story
that's
because you're going to have the true emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, it's a great point because I joke around. The CFO of the last place that I worked, the National Medal of Honor Museum, she's like a Audible connoisseur, and she's like, "Daryl, are you going to do this on Audible?" And I was like, "Well, not yet, but I'm going to." And she said, "You have to do an Audible, and it has to be you that reads it. Just
Yeah.
trust me." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay."
Yes.
I trusted her, so it's good to hear it from you as well. But I'm going to start working on the
Oh,
Audible, so it
100%.
should be ready probably, hopefully, maybe third week of January, maybe early February.
Ooh, can't
And
wait for that.
I'm just so super excited that the book is doing well. I think the law enforcement community is going to love it. And if I could, I'd really like. I know we're hurting on time,
No,
but
go.
maybe
No,
just
it's okay.
I will give you have as much time as
Okay.
you want, Daryl. You're my
this
boy.
means a lot to me, man. This right here, this means a lot to me. When I was 9 years old, a Huntington police officer named Paul Harmon was killed in my hometown, and he was killed close to my house. That really impacted me as a 9-year-old because I didn't understand, like, well, why would someone kill a cop? Like, he's a good guy.
Mhm.
And my parents are, you're that little annoying kid that's asking why. And my parents are like, well, hey, there's bad guys out there, and sometimes the bad guys kill good guys. They kill the cops. So that was really probably my first, kind of introduction into, like, this is a man. Paul Harmon was an Air Force veteran, and I think he's maybe a cop for 6 or 7 years, had a young wife, had 2 young babies. And these dudes, there he is right there. These 2 guys, they took his pistol and they killed him. But it really had a big impact on me because the values that he displayed, courage, sacrifice, commitment, integrity, citizenship, patriotism, all those things, that actually we talk about at the Medal of Honor a lot. But this man displayed all those things. So he was a hero of mine. And, what he did for the community and the country meant a lot to me. And it was a great honor for me to be able to put him in my book as a mentor and someone that inspired me, and there's others. I talk about Master
Amazing.
Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart from Black Hawk Down, both Medal of Honor recipients.
Yeah.
I talk about some of my school teachers, but it was really important for me to never forget where I came from. I came from Huntington, West Virginia. I came from nothing. And it was important for me to remember this police officer who gave his life for his community and his country. And it's been 40 some years. I was getting interviewed. This is kind of a unique story. I was getting interviewed on the local news, WSAZ, back in Huntington, West Virginia.
Mhm.
And, we were on air, and there was a lady that was like in the background. She wasn't being recorded or anything like that. And I told the Paul Harmon story, hey, December 1981, he was killed close to my house. I was 9 years old. And she came over after we finished, and she said, I
Yeah,
can't believe that you brought up Paul Harmon. I dropped my phone. And I was worried that it was going to come, it was going to mess up what
Mhm.
you guys were doing. She goes, I dropped my cell phone. It's been 40 years since that man was killed. and she had had the only interview with Paul Harmon's widow, who remained a widow the whole time. She never remarried.
Wow.
She stayed right there in Huntington. She raised her little girls. But this woman that dropped her phone, she said, I walk in the Spring Hill Cemetery, which is where, Huntington's known for, like, Marshall University, the plane crash, the movie We Are Marshall,
Yes.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yep.
So Spring Hill Cemetery is where the Marshall guys, the ones that weren't identified, that's where they're buried. Well, that's where Paul Harmon's buried. And she said, I walk in that cemetery for exercise every day. She said, I was walking, and I know where Paul Harmon's gravesite is. And she said, one day I walked and it was different. There was something different about it. There was new flowers and like a new addition. And she went over there to investigate, and it was his widow. She had finally passed. But this woman had done the only interview with Paul Harmon's widow. So she just couldn't believe it. But I just think I was so proud and happy to be able to share that story and to give that man some honor, put some more honor on that man's name for what he did. It just really meant a lot to me.
Well, normally we ask our guests if they have a dedication, but it sounds like that is absolutely who you wanted to dedicate your episode. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be great. Would love to dedicate. I mean, he earned it, man. He earned it. And I hope that I say little girls, but I'm sure they're women now, but I hope they're able to hear this and just know that someone honors the sacrifice of their father.
So
That's amazing.
Officer Paul J. Harmon, Huntington Police, West Virginia. Police officer Paul Harmon was shot and killed while investigating a break-in at approximately 1:45 a.m. The two suspects were escapees who were burglarizing the service station. The suspects attacked him and struck him in the head. They got control of his service weapon and shot him several times. Both suspects were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. One died in prison in 2000. Officer Harmon has served with the Huntington Beach Police Department for 7 years and had previously served with the United States Air Force. He was survived by his wife and 2 daughters. Paul J. Harmon, end of watch, December 14th, 1981. And how, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm a little inside baseball. I have no idea when this episode's going to air, but I can tell you right now, we're recording it 4 days before the anniversary of Paul Harmon's death.
Wow.
So, Officer Harmon, rest easy, brother. We got it from here.
We got you.
And I want to even say something that maybe people don't understand about the circular nature of life. If Officer Paul Harmon had not sacrificed his life for the city of Huntington or the people of Huntington, West Virginia, not only did he impact people during his service as a police officer, right?
Mm-hmm.
He saved people, he arrested people, he took people to jail. He protected the city of Huntington, West Virginia while he served. But his sacrifice led our guest Daryl to a life of sacrifice. He was one of the pieces that led Daryl to service. And every member of that 101st Airborne team who Daryl showed up to back up and be the tip of the spear and do business owes a little bit of their debt of gratitude, not just to Daryl and his team, but to Paul Harmon for making a sacrifice that inspired Daryl to undertake the life he undertook, which from the hour plus that we've spent with you, sir, I count you among one of the men that I consider a hero. And you may have looked to your left and you may have looked to your right and you may have felt like you had the imposter syndrome, but I will respect the hell out of you as long as I live. And
I appreciate that.
And part of that respect is owed to Paul Harmon because his sacrifice inspired you to do what you've done.
Definitely. I appreciate that.
So,
yeah, it's amazing.
Holy
Powerful.
shit. Well, it's a surprisingly emotional episode and we're over time and I'm happy to go over time. You guys can find our guest today Daryl Utt, his book Grit to Glory on Amazon. Soon to be an audio book, soon to be Audible, which I can't wait to either read or listen to. So hopefully, we'll figure
100%.
that out. I'm
That's gonna be amazing.
I'm into it.
Trust me, you're gonna love it.
I have no
Can't wait.
doubt. Especially when we jumped on the podcast and you have Black Hawk Down and Fearless right behind you. I know
Mhm.
you and I are we should be in a book club at this point, right?
Yes, right.
So thank you. I also would love to have you back on, and if nothing else, just to talk about the crossovers between your experiences as a team leader and how that correlates with lessons that your leadership can pass on to young men and women who are seeking a life of service in law enforcement or in the military,
Absolutely.
or those young men and women who are in the military currently. I in my regular job, I just hired a young woman who served in both the Marine Corps and the Army. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have yet to hire a more squared away person.
Awesome.
In her young years, she showed up day one, and I assigned her to her duty station, and she did the job to the point where I showed up at the end of the day on her first day, and the people that I assigned her to went, "She's amazing. She's
That's
spectacular."
awesome.
That is what the heart of a servant will bring. And the heart of a servant is what veterans and law enforcement officers and firefighters and EMTs and medics have.
Yep.
So,
Improvise,
Daryl,
adapt, and
thank you.
overcome.
Yep. And we hope you will come back.
I'd love to. I'd love
We would
to.
love to. We would
Yes,
love
sir.
to just sit and rap with you.
Let's
This
do
has
it.
been amazing. So
Let's do it.
thank you, sir. Chuck, what do you got for us?
Well, I want to say thank you, Master for coming on today. It was a pleasure. You are a real true hero in my eyes, sir. Thank you so much. And I think your dedication to leadership and leading your people and writing your book is just amazing. And we would love to have you back on to discuss more of that. Thank you for all today for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you are already following us, we'd really appreciate if you would share our posts and help spread the word. You can also check us out and link in our bio on both platforms to find all of our social media, our media links, and our website. Our podcast is available on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. If you'd like to support us, please head over to our website at www.warstoriesofficial.com to grab some gear. Do you have a story to tell, or you know someone who does? We're always looking for law enforcement, corrections officers, dispatchers, firefighters, medics, and veterans, but also those ER docs and ER nurses. We know you guys have some crazy stories to feature on the show. If you're interested, email us at booking.warstories@gmail.com and share your story. You can also check us out on LinkedIn.
Isn't there
we'd
a
love to
like
have you
and
on.
subscribe button below us right here?
Oh, yeah.
On YouTube? If
We'd
you're on
love to have you on. If you know someone to be a great fit, please send them our way. Thank you for the support. Stay safe and be sure to hit that like, comment, subscribe. It really helps out the algorithm. Hit the notification bell on YouTube. That way you can be notified when any live drops or any new episodes do drop. Thank you for support. Stay safe.
And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.